The breeze in the monastery is dense. It's dark, silent, almost sacred, and I'm terrified. My breath is heavy, and in my small room, I sleep on a stone floor. No mattress. I'm 14. It's a daily reminder of where I am, but more importantly, where I am not. It's cold, and I'm hugging my blanket to soften the chill around me. In the monastery, I have chores. Before my meals, chores. After meals, I spend hours scrubbing endless piles of dishes. The ring of a bell marks when I can eat, how much I can eat, and when I should stop. It's the 80s, and I am in the southern coast of India. My community has this unwritten rule. It's a waste of time and money to send women to school. And because of that, there was no high school for aspiring women like me. So I've come to this nearby town to study computer science. The male students, they have freedom, they live in dorms. But I'm isolated in this monastery only because of my gender and only because I dared to seek an education. There are times when I want to give up. But what's the alternative? Getting an education is everything I have ever wanted. Giving up, my right, is not an option. If I do, there will be no trace of my existence in this world. So I take a risk to educate myself, and in return, I sacrificed my childhood. Reuters reported in 2018 that Indian women perform 10 times more unpaid domestic work than men. So they contribute only to 18% of India's GDP, one of the lowest from a female workforce in the world. And remember, that's coming from the most populated country in the world today. Women like me are a source of free labor. But for me, my life could be more. For 10 years, I'm that source of free labor, but I'm also building my invisible future brick by brick. And one day, I do it. I'm the first woman in my community to graduate with a degree in computer engineering. The news ripples through my community like wildfire. Some don't believe it, some are proud, but many are silent. It doesn't matter, I've done it. I'm the first woman in my community to emigrate to a foreign country roughly 10,000 miles away and to never return. I took a risk to be free. I arrive in the US with $80 in my pocket. I'm 25, and New York City is overwhelming. I didn't even know what Wall Street was, and now I'm consulting at the world's top investment bank. My job is to use technology to stop financial losses. I don't fit in. I barely know the language. I have no idea about the culture. I'm always catching up in meetings, and no one has time to explain things to me. I went to school to study computers, and now I have to learn finance on top of it. 5 years go like this. It's 2008. This Wall Street bank is in trouble. One day, I'm stepping off the elevator on the 70th floor. I've never been here before. The top floor has gold-plated walls. I've been called into the boardroom. Around that large oak table, I sit with a group of men, experienced bankers, tech executives, men who had seen the rise and fall of markets and believed stubbornly that this bank would survive. It's like an Indian fish market here. Everyone is shouting and no one is listening. To my left, Bob is screaming. He's like, oh, this is just a temporary setback. To my right, Frank is arguing. He's like, yep, this is just a market setback. It'll fix itself. I can't believe it. All of us in this room are one step away from sinking the global economy, and many of us are not ready to face the reality. No one is coming to bail us out. Now, I'm forced to speak up and ruin their day. I'm the youngest in that room and the only woman of color. They have zero interest in hearing my ideas. But I take a risk to speak up anyway. I break down the credit risk numbers, I explain the hard technical facts, but more importantly, I underline how this crisis affects everyday people beyond just Wall Street. Now, the room is silent. It takes so long that finally Mark from across the table speaks up. He's my mentor and the senior risk director. His voice is measured and cautious, but I can hear the cracks in his confidence. He says, "She's right, it's time." The energy in the room changes. Now, no one is yelling anymore. Mark, Bob, Frank, myself, and others, we start creating a plan to move forward. And with that, one of the oldest banks in the world, with an iron grip on traditions, begins preparing for bankruptcy. It's scary to be the first and only in a room, and it's intimidating to voice an unpopular opinion, especially to a crowd that believes they know everything. But I took a risk to challenge authority. Doing nothing would have been dangerous for this bank in trouble. Even when we had no news to report, we were transparent with the public and we had to mind the human lives involved. Now, I've been sharing about taking big risks, but until my daughter Reva was born, most of the risks that I took were on myself and for myself. Reva became my guiding principle in every decision. As a single mom, am I making her life better than I have ever had? Her presence has convinced me that putting people in the risk equation is a non-negotiable. Even when there is no backup plan, and even when there is no safety net. Fast forward to March 15, 2020. I'm 43. I'm now a risk advisor at the executive level for the world's top credit rating agency. Overnight, I'm sitting at my kitchen table in my makeshift office, and I'm responsible to take care of 300 people sitting just like me in different corners of the world. All of us are shocked by the pandemic, but for my C-suite, it's business as usual. I keep getting the same calls from my managers. The financial pressure is escalating, and we need to make our usual profits. It's the quarter end, it's a fiscal year end. We need to report our earnings to the market. On top of it, we should comply with new regulations in 40 countries. I'm so stressed. Stop calling me. Sure, all of us are responsible for the bottom line, but I can't shake a deeper question. What about our people? We need to offer more than just a paycheck. I call my team leads, and they are struggling. They need urgent support. One day, I'm on a call with Steve, my compliance expert. He hasn't slept in 2 days. His mom is visiting from Portugal. She's diabetic, in her 60s, and stuck in the US. Her insulin is running out and Steve's panicking. I tell him, "Steve, just take care of your mom." Steve got 2 weeks vacation, but first, we went to HR together. They helped get new insurance and new insulin for his mom. That's one of the many calls I have during that time. And that's how, as a team, we shift our priorities together to taking care of each other first. Few months later, we successfully completed our project, but to my relief, my C-suite is happy, but more importantly, my team and their families were safe, including Steve and his mom. Even with the time off, Steve met his deadlines. He had my back through a difficult compliance audit. He caught a data breach that could have crashed the global stock markets, and he helped us avoid $50 million in fines. I learned that when I have my team's back, I earn their long-term loyalty. I built a team that continued working with me and not for me. But that wasn't my greatest achievement. We took a risk to care for people over profits. Today, my daughter Reva is in her 20s. She's an engineer on Wall Street at an investment bank. And I did not encourage that. I told her she could be anything she wanted to be except for that because I knew the stress of my industry. I always wanted her to make her own choices, and she chose Wall Street for herself. Now Reva is starting to take her own risks, both personally and professionally. When she calls me for advice, I challenge her with 3 questions. And that's what I want to leave you with today. First, what's the traditional way of doing things and what can you do differently? Thinking outside the box is usually a good thing. It's also the hard way because you're creating your own path. Second, is doing nothing more dangerous than doing something? If I had not fought for my education, I would have never learned to read or write. I would have become that source of free labor, but more importantly, after all these years, my daughter would have also become that source of free labor. Third, are you prioritizing the health and well-being for yourself and your people? Reva is part of a global team. Those are her people. For me, my people are the people that I led during the bankruptcy, during the pandemic, and everyone in between. They're also my friends, my family, and my community today. Raising Reva as a single mom has taught me that prioritizing these 3 things never lets me down. Now, taking risks is hard. It can be scary, and you may fail along the way. I have failed more times than I can count. So has Reva, and so will you. But risk-taking is a muscle. The more you take that first step, the easier it gets to try new things and to set up new goals. Both Reva and I are living proof that we are not a statistic anymore. As outsiders, we have effected big change, systemic change, for ourselves and for our people. And if I, a woman from a small village in South India, who slept on a stone floor in a monastery can do it, so can you.